Next up at UFC Vegas 44, we have Brendan Allen versus late replacement Chris Curtis. Brendan Allen, 17-4 overall, 4-1 in his last 5, coming off of that awesome win over Punahil Soriano. Chris Curtis, 27-8, 5-0 in his last 5, coming off of that awesome first-round knockout over Phil Hawes. On paper, this should be another striker versus grappler matchup with Chris Curtis yet again stepping in on short notice. Brendan Allen is a BJJ black belt with solid low kicks, great takedowns, and much improved striking. He moved to Sanford MMA a few camps ago, and you can see those improvements. Historically, his game plan was grappling. He would get the takedown, be crazy tough on top, work from there. But at some point in the last year and a half, he turned into a striker. Brendan Allen is now officially a striker. His last fight against Punahil was interesting because Punahil is an insane power striker who's dangerous at all times. The clear path would have been for Brendan Allen to grapple, but he didn't. And he just straight up won a kickboxing fight against who on paper was the far more dangerous and much better kickboxer. Chris Curtis, there's a ton of tape on him. We've broken him down a few times now, even though he's only been in the UFC for all of a month. And he's an easy guy to break down. He has nice, clean boxing. He's got decent takedown defense and improved takedown offense. He has solid power in his hands, and it comes from short, clean punches, which just catches people off guard. He works solid leg kicks, and he'll touch up the body. He takes his time with his shots, but he's always moving. He's always out of the way or trying to set something up. We've seen him struggle with pure wrestlers in the past. If you go back to his Magomed Karimov fight, you'll see that he faded as the fight went on. He had absolutely no answer for the ground and pound. Chris Curtis made quite the statement a couple weeks ago in his fight against Phil Hawes. But before everyone rides that train and has Chris Curtis in their parlays and love him as the massive underdog favorite, let me remind you that he was losing that fight. Chris Curtis was losing that fight. Phil Hawes was winning the striking exchanges until he was knocked out, so I know how stupid that sounds, but he was winning those striking exchanges. Phil landed 48 strikes to Chris's 21. And the only reason Chris even had the opportunity to hit Phil the way that he did is because Phil was playing patty cake. He'd touch him up, fake a takedown, go back to touching him up. He did that 3 times. The boy who cried wolf, Chris wasn't falling for it anymore and then absolutely cracked him. So Chris was a step behind that entire time. He was able to pull it off. He's got a ton of power and he will always be dangerous. I don't think Brendan Allen will make those same mistakes. While he doesn't have as much power, he has become a good technical striker. I just don't see him making those mistakes. I think he can win a technical striking fight if it stays there. He could absolutely win if he wrestles. I've got Brendan Allen winning. I'm pretty confident in that win, but these odds are obviously pretty crazy. I'm not touching the odds. I like Brendan Allen to win. Jakey boy. I'll let Dan get settled. Jakey boy. We already kind of broke this down, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the one that called that Phil Hall's knockout. I said if Phil Hall doesn't wrestle, he's going to get knocked out. And he got knocked out. This is the exact same situation. You think that he's going to win the striking exchanges versus Chris Curtis. It's not going to happen. He's going to get knocked out if he tries to strike with Chris Curtis. He has a very easy path to victory. Every time he takes somebody down, he submits them. He wins. He wins the fight. Just take Chris Curtis down and submit it. Chris Curtis has terrible takedown defense. It's not even very good. It's not even like it's average. I think it's terrible. He's going to have no issues taking Chris Curtis down. Just take him down, submit him, and move on. You're a 350 favorite. You don't have to show off. Just get your win. Because if you start striking, you're going to get knocked out. It's going to be the exact same situation. Chris Curtis is a Golden Gloves champ. He's got real power in his hands. And you mentioned he was losing versus Phil Hawes. He's got that high guard, that boxing stance. He'll absorb shots. He's waiting. He's finding his timing. And the second he finds his timing, you're seeing stars. So I think Brendan Allen is definitely the play. He's a safe play. He should win. But if he starts striking Chris Curtis, the exact same thing's going to happen, man. These people don't learn. These grapplers that think they're strikers, just do what you got to do, man. Phil Hawes made the mistake. Brendan Allen, just grapple him. Just grapple him.
Yeah, listen, I completely agree with all of that. And Chris Curtis has proven that he's live. But Brendan Allen, is a much better striker than Phil Hawes. He doesn't have the same power Phil Hawes does, but he's got volume. He's got good footwork. And we literally just watched Brendan Allen beat a big power puncher. Granted, Punahele is different than Chris Curtis, but we just watched him win that fight. Danny Boy.
And Chris Curtis too kind of baits people into striking with him with that high guard, right? It's kind of like the Peter Yan or a Piotr Yan. He has that tight guard, and it feels like you can just keep punching him, but really those punches aren't really getting through. I mean, Phil Hawes got through the guard a few times, but people will just keep striking. All of a sudden, he just boom, and you're lights out.
Danny Boy, what are your thoughts?
Jacob, I think you nailed it, man. You covered a lot of what I was going to say. And Angelo, you were talking about Chris Curtis losing that first round against Hawes. I was watching it too. He was losing for sure, but the difference was he was composed. He's got the composure of a boxer. He had his hands up, and he was always looking for that shot. So Brendan Allen, like you guys have said, he's fallen in love with his striking lately. I don't think this is the fight to do that. It's not, we're not trying to prove points here. We're trying to win fights and make money. Brendan Allen has a path, like we said, with wrestling. I don't know. His last fight against Soriano, he probably could have wrestled. He chose not to. But I think there's a different level of skill, timing, and just overall athleticism from a true boxer than there is against a guy like Soriano, who's a power puncher, a good striker. But Chris Curtis is a legit boxer who's going to find those openings. And all it takes is one mistake. We saw it with Hawes. So I think Brendan Allen is the pick if he wrestles. But, man, I don't know. He might be one of those guys who's going to try to prove a point and strike. And I will say, too, it's not like Chris Curtis is, he's got 6 fights, 7 fights. He's a boxer. Yeah, he's got 30-something MMA fights. So it's not like he's completely new to the thought of wrestling. So I don't know. He might be one of those guys that could be, working on his wrestling. I saw Hawes take some shots, and they were like half attempts, almost at fakes.
They were complete.
So it's hard to evaluate if Curtis, you can't even count him as a defense, but it looked like his hips were all right. But I don't know. You go watch back a few fights, and to Jacob's point, he got taken down pretty easily. So I don't know. This one scares me a little bit, but Brendan Allen's got to be the pick. But if he tries to strike, man, I think he could get in some trouble. He'll win early, but I think he could get in trouble later. From like a multi-entry standpoint, I think there's a lot of upside to Chris Curtis here.
100%. And I'm sorry to block your face here, but Mbaye is a good point. We forgot to mention it. We mentioned it earlier in the week with the early breakdown. Chris Curtis is a welterweight. He took the Phil Hawes fight on like 12 hours notice at middleweight. Phil Hawes turned it down. They rebooked it a month later. They kept it at middleweight. And now Chris is stepping in on short notice again as a middleweight. But he is a straight-up welterweight. Not that he's not small. He didn't look small compared to Phil Hawes, but he is a welterweight. This is not his weight class. It's not like Brendan Allen's massive, but, so I think we all agree.
I mean, that should be even more of an advantage for Allen in the grappling, right? He should be able to control him even more in those positions.
Should be able to. I mean, so I think we're all basically on the same page. I'm a little higher on Brendan Allen than you two are, but for the most part, we all think Brendan Allen's the pick. We think minus 350 is a bit absurd. Is anybody here spending the $9,600 in DraftKings on Brendan Allen?
I mean, if you want to trust that he's going to go game plan, he honestly could take Chris. In my mind, he can take Chris and submit him inside of 2 minutes if he wants to. I think he's that good. I think Brendan Allen is that good on the ground, and Chris Curtis is that inexperienced on the ground. I think there's worlds apart on the ground, but I just don't think he's going to do it, man. I just don't think he's going to do it.
Yeah, and I got to give Chris credit though, because if Magomed Karimov didn't submit him, I don't know if now Brendan Allen's a much more slick jiu-jitsu guy than Magomed is, but Chris just took that wrestling beating the entire fight and was just hung tough. So yeah, I don't think there's a stoppage, and I'm not spending $9,600 is Amanda Nunes money. I'm not spending that here. That's not going to happen.
The value, I hate to say, is on Chris Curtis, even though you're right. He could get dominated in this fight. Brendan Allen is tough as nails, and just game plan. If he has the right game plan, it should go his way. But, man, I don't know. I got one of those weird feelings like Chris Curtis might shock some people here. Not early, but second round, third round. I don't know.
We've seen that happen in the past. Somebody flies onto the scene, gets a couple crazy wins. So he's definitely heading on the path, and he's got himself a nice little win streak. What do you guys think of Monkey Knife Fight? I think more is the play. I do think this fight goes a little bit. Brendan Allen's tough. Chris Curtis is tough. I think this fight will go a little bit. My only hesitation is actually Chris Curtis's line, because he takes his time. And what was the stat that I read off? He only landed, I guess he landed 21 in that first round. So if you think this goes a few rounds, you'll hit that 44. I like more here. What do you guys think, Jake?
Yeah, I'll do more because he is a boxer, so he'll be pumping that jab out there. I like more.
Danny.
This is tough. It's like, because I don't, Chris Curtis landing over 44.5 means they're striking the whole time. I guess I like more less.
Less than 44. So you do think you're trusting Brendan Allen to actually grapple?
Yeah, I think he's gonna. I mean, I think as an MMA fighter with a coaching staff, you're fighting a guy who's a boxer.
I agree, but he just fought.
He had 0 takedown attempts versus Sean. What's his name?
No, I know. I know. That's why I'm like, but Chris Curtis. There's a difference between I think Soriano's boxing and Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis is an actual boxer, right? I don't know. I think Brendan Allen would not be a good game plan to go strike from the bat and just keep going with that. So I think he's going to wrestle early. I wouldn't be surprised if he's okay with some exchanges. So I think he'll get the punches in on the ground, maybe some exchanges. And if Curtis does win, I don't think it's going to be 60 points. I don't think it's going to be a boxing match the way he's winning. I think it's going to be like he lands a shot with an opening.
Yeah. And before we move on, Jill had a good point. At least she said she would rather spend $9,600 on Allen than $9,500 on Morono or Kopp at $9,400. That's a fair
I agree with her there.
Yeah, I Chris agree. Is the less dangerous out of all those three opponents.
Yeah, if I have to pick between them, I would, but $9,600 is still a lot. But this is a weird card where we like a lot of inexpected people, so we'll see what happens. Go to wewantpicks.com/bets. We now have 5 betting partners. Jump in, make a deposit with any of them, and I will send you $50 as a thank you for supporting us and our partners. You can make deposits and do all of them, and I'll send you $250. wewantpicks.com/bets.